This is Crash Bandicoot 2, any percent game over abuse. This is a category unlike any you've probably seen in Crash. It's very interesting. All right, I like to play
That's
in
one way to
German.
put it.
All right, I'm gonna count down from 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. All right. So we don't actually use the game over abuse in this first level, so I'll have Burger explain the movement tech while we get through this.
Yeah, okay, sure. So the main movement tech that we use here is called neutral slide spin, or NSS for short, that we'll say a lot. The tech basically consists of first you slide, and then at the end of the slide, or before the end of the slide, whatever, you let go of the D-pad completely and then spin. So you're not touching any directions during the spin, and the result is that it actually carries your slide speed all the way through the spin. So normally if you just like held up the whole time and did a slide spin, you would slow down quite a bit during the spin part of it. You would slow back down to walking speed. But instead, if you let go of the D-pad the whole time, then you go much faster. You retain the slide speed throughout all of your movement, and that's fast. The second thing to note is zigzag, which means that, yeah, instead of holding just forward when you're going to want to go up, you instead want to alternate diagonals between like up left and up right, and that makes you go forward faster. You can zigzag basically any time that you're not walking. You can zigzag in the air, and you can zigzag the slide part of an NSS. But yeah, so that's basically it for the movement tech. Now we can get into the game over abuse part.
Yeah. The first half of this level is going to look pretty normal, and then I'm going to do something really weird after I pick up the crystal. I'll explain it when I get there. Yeah. So here you see a bit of how NSS and zigzag make you significantly faster than the boulder. We're just kind of destroying it. Zigzag during slides is very fast. I'm not super comfortable with it, so I throw it in where I can, but I do zigzag a lot during jumps like that. All right, so we're coming up to the crystal. We're going to grab this crystal and then beeline back to this hole here and then death abuse. And then we're going to death abuse 4 more times into a game over. So the way the game over abuse works, and this is exclusive to Crash 2, is that if you grab a crystal in a level and then you game over, the crystal actually saves in this like invisible inventory, and if you finish any other level, then you'll get the crystal for both that level and any levels that you game overed in, and this stacks. So what we're going to do for the rest of the warp room is we're going to game over in the next 2 levels, and then we're going to finish the last level in the warp room, and then we should get 4 crystals at the same time. And it's a very unique trick that saves, I think, like about 3 minutes over the no game over abuse category, and it also drastically changes the route, so it's really interesting to watch. It is very risky though, because if you game over at a wrong time, then you can lose like minutes.
Yeah, like this is the only category in the game where you're going to have 0 lives at any point ever, reasonably.
And at many points.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You purposely get down to 0 lives all over the place. You'll be playing through entire levels with 0 lives with the intention of death abusing and gaming over later on. So yeah, there's a lot of risk to this category.
It's neat though, because you get to see like the fastest place to game over. Here is a good example. There is no respawn animations. It's really fast. Oh my. I almost got shoeless the pits. The one downside to the death abuse is that if you fall into a hole, there's a random chance that you get the shoes animation where Crash's shoes fly into the air. It's random, and there's really not much you can do about getting it, but thankfully it's pretty infrequent.
Yeah, it's what, like a 25% chance of happening every time you fall.
Yeah, I believe so.
So it's statistically going to happen quite a few times throughout this run with the sheer number of death abuses we have to do.
I don't think it's too much of an influence on the time, though, unless I get really unlucky. But it will just naturally happen a few times.
Yeah.
So this level is Hang 8. A lot of the levels that you game over abuse in are ones where the crystal's like halfway through the level. So after this crystal, there's still quite a bit of level left, but it's faster than this game over abuse. Note the length of this drowning animation. It's pretty long, but for some reason, this specific spot in Hang 8 is just really quick to respawn, which is why we game over abuse here. Also on the PAL version, which is the one we're running on, there's no like respawn warp animation there either. So that was Hang 8. It's pretty quick. The next level is the last one in this warp room, which is Snow Go. We are going to finish this level because you have to finish at least one level in the warp room to get all the crystals. But we will be death abusing in it just because the next level will be game overing in. It's very slow to die in. Oh, now I hope I don't mess that up. So it's faster to just death abuse in Snow Go and then carry through the first boss fight into the next level with 0 lives, which is where a lot of the risk for this category comes. So I'll break this checkpoint and then just immediately death abuse down to 0. This is one of the first levels where it becomes kind of risky, but thankfully Snow Go's not too difficult of a level. Unless I mess up the movement.
Let's not jinx ourselves here.
Right. During a practice run I did actually game over in this level at the very end, and it was kind of sad. I'll grab this mask for safety. The worst thing that could happen is just like dropping an input on like one of the last seals. There's a couple hole skips you can do there, but just for not game overing, I'm just gonna not do them. And that was warp 1. So here you're gonna see Crash is gonna throw 4 crystals all at the same time. And that'll be the crystals for all 4 levels that we used the game overviews in. And then we'll be going to the first boss, Ripperoo, notoriously one of the most easy bosses. There's really not a lot going on here.
Can we use the word boring?
Yes, we can use the word boring. There's really not a lot going on in this boss battle.
The pattern that Ripperoo covers is exactly the same every time. There's not even anything to react to. So
I don't even want to try and be flashy, because when I did in a practice run, I got a wrong way slide and ran into a TNT and died.
Shoutouts to, I think it was Vanny getting stuck out of bounds in this level.
I had that happen once. When it was before I was streaming and I was just doing offline runs. I got out of bounds in this fight. It's very disheartening for this fight to go wrong, because it's so difficult for it to go wrong just because you just stand here.
This boss fight here is the biggest psychological test of the whole video game. You have to resist the
urge to do something fancy.
Yeah.
Like here, I was facing this way and I tried to slide down. I got a wrong way slide and ran right into that TNT as it exploded and game overed.
Oh, yeah, that's what you were mentioning. Okay.
Yeah. It was like, if that ever happened during a marathon run, I would never hear the end of it. I'd be like, Rico, remember when you game overed in Ripperoo? Yes.
Well, thankfully, there's the end of that.
Yeah.
Even the boring bosses still don't actually last all that long.
And I lined up the body slam with him face planting, so it was all
high
optimal.
level strats.
All optimal. That's the flashiest thing I do in this fight. And that was Warp Room 1. So Warp Room 2 actually had a bit of a reroute in recent times. We used to start with level 8, but now we're going to start with level 10, the Eel Deal. This is just for some optimization of Warp Room movement. So this is the first sewer level, and these levels don't really have many places to death abuse quickly, which is why we entered it with 0 lives.
Yeah, that's something that you have to pay attention to a lot in this category, like when you're contemplating the route, why the routing decisions were made, is that different death animations, different ways of dying in this game take different amounts of time before you respawn, or before you lose the life and game over or whatever. And so levels like this animation that we're getting here, this angel animation, is extremely slow. It's probably the slowest way to die in the game.
Aside from bear death animations, it's
right.
very, very slow.
So yeah, it's something you very much want to avoid when possible.
Another minor note is that even though I'm game overing, I'm still breaking checkpoints. The way Crash 2 works in terms of when you respawn is that the further away the respawn point is from where you lost the life is longer, depending on the length. The time to respawn is quicker or slower. So I break the checkpoint, because this happens even if you're game overing, is that you want to, if I were to not break that checkpoint, the respawn time would be a lot quicker, so the time to the game over screen would be slower. I'm messing up all my words on this. But basically, breaking the checkpoints, even though I'm going to game over, just reduces the time that I spend getting to the game over screen. So even in levels where I have 0 lives, I'll still break checkpoints just for like minor time saves like that. It'll also come up in the level after this one. So this is Crash Crush. It's just another chase level. We're gonna Death Abuse in this one just because the crystal is very close to the end of the level, and the next level is another one with really slow death animations. So we're just gonna drop to 0 for this one.
Something that probably should have mentioned actually a bit ago in this level, you might have noticed Rico jumping over a set of boxes instead of actually just slide spinning through them like you normally would. In this category, since you have to Death Abuse, since you have to game over, getting extra lives is bad. It wastes time. It means you have to Death Abuse an extra time, and so if you know that there's a life crate in a certain box, you might have to actually avoid certain boxes in some places.
Yeah, that's actually one of the minor things about Go Abuse that I really like compared to a category like No Go, is that there's a lot of little minor optimizations like that to me give a lot of depth to the category and make it extremely interesting to me. So this is the first of 2 bear levels. This is Barrett. Another one of my favorite things about this category is we spend as little time on the bear as we possibly can.
Short of doing the item glitch and cutting it out completely,
yeah.
That is.
Yeah, this is one of the levels where the crystal pops up at its earliest. So I'm doing a little slow on the movement just because it felt a little shaky at the beginning, and game overing at the wrong time in a level like this is very, very bad. So yeah, that was about 30 seconds of the level.
Yeah.
And then we're just done. And
I guess even though we barely see it, we could mention the bear movement tech.
Yeah.
You charge and then you jump immediately to cancel the charge. It makes it so the jump is still fast, but that way you don't run into the cooldown between times charging.
Yeah.
So
that's important to mention because we'll see a bit more of the second bear level.
yeah.
And that one's a bit further into the level. Yeah, so this is Air Crash. This is going to be another example of a specific spot where you Death Abuse makes the drowning animation significantly shorter for some reason.
The water in these levels kind of behaves weirdly like that. There's also certain spots in the water sometimes where Crash will just sink down endlessly for a while before dying.
Yeah, I find that normally happens if you die while you're standing on like a hippo or one of the pillars. But if you just fall into the water like that, and then he just gets that animation. So this is a weird one. It's like if you jump between this hippo and the later platform, you get the quick animation, but if you're like near the hippo or if you land on the pillar, you get the really long animation. I'm not actually sure why it's quicker if you just do this. It's a question I get a lot when people watch this, is why are you jumping over the hippo? It's because you get the quick animation like that. I could not tell you why it's like that. It's just Crash 2. Alright, so this will be the last level in the warp room. This is Snowbiz. We'll be Death Abusing to 0 in this one again and then finishing the level. This level is a lot scarier than Snow Go because you Death Abuse really early on, and the rest of the level is actually kind of challenging. So I'll play it a little safe also, just for the sake of not losing time. Yeah, something of note with my estimate. The estimate I put is 45 minutes, but my PB in this category is 39:40, and that's just because this can be a very unforgiving category if you game over at the wrong time. So I'll play this a bit safer than I normally would on on a not reset list. Something I would mention is the speed of the slide spin on ice is the fastest possible movement, I believe.
That should be right.
Yeah. So you see, like, when you do a slide spin on any type of slide spin on the ice, you just move really quickly, and it can carry over onto the snow if you time it properly.
Yeah. Like if you want to be really technical, it's just sliding on ice is fast, and then doing the spin just carries the slide speed.
I lost my mask earlier than I wanted to, so I'm going to be really, really like safe here. Game overing at the end of Snowbiz would be very not good.
Yeah.
Alright, so that's Warp Room 2.
Now we have a boss fight that actually makes you do stuff.
Yeah, this is one of the 2 boss fights that actually has like a fair amount of, I guess, strategy or optimization. So yeah, this is the Komodo Bros. So the skinny guy, Joe, spins, and when he stops, you want to slide into him. Wow, that was not how I wanted to do that.
Okay.
I'm going to have to be really safe now.
Yeah, so the way this fight works is that the spinny guy, Joe, did you say it was Joe? Yeah,
Yeah,
the spinny guy, Joe, his movement, his bounces, the direction he goes is purely based on Crash's position. So if you just move Crash into certain positions, you can predict, like, we knew that Joe was going to stop at that exact point there.
I might lose a lot of time in the last phase, because it's...
The third phase is the most precise to actually get Joe to do what you want,
Yeah,
and it's risky to do if you're not used to doing it. You can take damage pretty easily.
And because I already lost my mask, I'm going to be like doing really unoptimal stuff that might... Like, this is going to lose me a lot of time just because I'm shaking the camera, but I really don't feel safe doing it otherwise.
The third phase especially, you have to be kind of careful because it's possible to get Joe just like following you endlessly like this.
Yeah, I'm trying to
You'll want
dodge
him
him.
to,
Yeah.
You want to get him to bounce back in a different way.
Yeah, that was not good, but it's better than game overing by mistake.
Very much so.
I think the way Boom Fan described it to me once is that the more you move the camera, the longer he takes following you. Because like, I really didn't want to be in that position, but game overing is really bad because death abusing in that boss fight is really slow, and then death abusing in this level is really slow. This is bear down. This is universally one of the least liked levels in this game, I believe, across every category.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's not even like difficult, it's just...
It's long.
It's long, it's really slow paced compared to a lot of the rest of the game, because Crash 2 is overall pretty fast, but you just, given the layout of the level, you just, it's a really huge drop in pace. And in this category in particular, it's really awful to game over, and you can lose... Grabbing an extra life can cost you like 15 seconds, and there's a lot of crates that have them, so I just avoid basically every crate in this level. And game overing can cost like over a minute.
Yeah, like there's a few possible death animations you can get as the bear, but they're all super slow. And plus, like, due to the nature of the level, you can't really die super close to a checkpoint. It's just like there's nowhere to die that close to a checkpoint. It'll take a while to even get back to the death abuse point. It'll just be awful experience.
Thankfully it went well. So that's actually the last we're going to see of the polar bear. He actually shows up in one more level in the normal pass with all the crystals, but that level is the next one, and we'll be game over abusing before we ever reach him. So this is unbearable. It's the third chase level. It has a bit of a twist compared to the first two. Instead of a boulder, you are chased by a huge polar bear.
You're chased by a polar bear-shaped boulder.
Yeah, that's what that is. I feel like the bear actually moves slower than the boulders.
Because its shape is not as conducive to rolling.
Yeah.
Boulders roll a little better than bear-shaped boulders. But yeah, anyway, this is...
It's another blatant, really good use of the game over abuse, because the crystal's midway through the level. There's actually 2 more chase sections that we're just entirely cutting out of the level. This is some good shoe RNG. 3 shoes. Can we go for 4? Can we go for 5? I was kidding.
We got it.
I was kidding.
I think that's some kind of lucky omen.
That was
take this as a good
like
sign.
I knew I wanted the no shoes and pits, and it was like instead you can just have 5 in unbearable. Like, thanks. I don't think I've ever actually had 5 in a single level.
Now we just get to wait and see where that good luck manifests itself.
Yeah. So this is Road to Ruin. I actually think this level is only super interesting in 100%. It's pretty straightforward otherwise, and it'll be another pretty quick game over abuse here. Here's another. I'm gonna jump over this crate because that question mark crate actually has a life in it if you have a low life count, which you often do in this category. And yeah, that's all there is to Road to Ruin. So the next level is Sewer Relator. This is actually one of the most interesting levels in the category, in my opinion. It's also one of the most terrifying and easiest to mess up, so I will be playing it a lot safer than I normally do. There's a lot of specific things you need to do in this level, and I missed that snipe as I always do in game over abuse. I'm actually not too terrible at getting that in the other categories, but I don't know if it's just like the game over cycles resetting or something, but I just almost never get it in Go.
It's because the game knows it's important for you to get it here because you don't have any masks.
Yeah, I'm going to play this safe. You can skip this fire enemy, but it's a little precise, and if I mess it up, I'll lose this mask, and I'd rather just keep this moving into the rest of the level. So you can skip these fan blades just like there. I didn't think that would actually work. I specifically skipped that checkpoint for a reason. And then use the mask here to skip this fire guy, and then grab the crystal, and then hit the electric water. So this takes you back to the first checkpoint, and I specifically broke the mask before the checkpoint because without the respawn animation, you have enough time to slide into this electric water before it stops, and this is the fastest way to game over abuse. Every other way to game over abuse in this level is so horrendously slow that if you mess that up, it's probably better to just finish the level. And this will be the last level in the warp room, plant food. This is just going to be straightforward racing to the end of the level. Warp 3 is actually interesting, and that's the one warp room where you actually game over abuse in 4 levels and then only finish 1. It just lines up like that really well. There isn't too much to this one. I guess one thing we didn't mention in Hang A is the timer in the bottom right corner, because it didn't matter for that level because we game overed.
Oh yeah.
But that's if you reach the end of the level before that timer runs out, you get awarded what's called the timer gem. In plant food, it's actually the yellow gem, one of the 5 colored gems. Picking it up is actually slower because you have to throw it up in the warp room. So it's actually faster to walk around it, which I'll be doing at the end of this level. And I'm specifically trying to avoid these plants because I will have to do 1 damage abuse at the end of the level. And that was a nice wrong way slide.
Wrong way slides are a fun thing that can happen in this game pretty easily in spots like that, where even if you're holding one direction, if Crash doesn't have the time to actually turn to face that direction before you slide, then he might slide off in some other direction, whatever direction he happens to be facing at the time.
Sometimes it's inconvenient, other times it's really bad. That time it was just inconvenient because I was able to save it. Alright, so he's going to throw all 5 crystals right now. And then the next boss fight is Tiny. I don't know if I would really say he's RNG. There's some RNG to it, but there's ways you can manipulate it. But the first thing we're going to do is death abuse in it. Just because it's really, really fast to death abuse in this boss fight. You just slide off like that. And this will be useful going into the Warp Room 4. But the way this fight works is that Tiny follows you wherever you go, and you just have to lure him into these platforms that will fall after they turn red like this. So the patterns in which the platforms fall is somewhat random, but there's specific sets that it can be, and the way you move in the fight can manipulate it so that it's not entirely guaranteed what happens, but it's like better favored for you, I would say. This is a really weird one, but I get it a lot. So this last phase is the most annoying one because if you get a corner and Tiny's nowhere near it, then he will just never fall into it. Oh, thankfully I didn't get a corner. All right. Oh, that was really good. It's about as good as I can expect Tiny to go, honestly.
No dance in air.
That was too far away. I didn't want to risk it. But yeah, you can actually land on Tiny, and then as he falls, Crash will just dance in the air. Also, shout-outs to every time Tiny falls, his teeth disappear.
Never noticed that.
That's one of my favorite ones.
That is a fun fact.
Yeah, so this is where this warp room is really where the run kind of kicks it into high gear. A lot of the hardest levels are in this warp room. This is one of them. This is Digging It. This is a very long level and very, very treacherous. It's not the end of the world if I game over in it compared to other levels, but it would still be a significant time loss. And the way these tiki heads move or whatever, and the way the plants throw these bombs, I believe, is random. Yeah, that's not how I wanted to do that.
Yeah, they're random.
Yeah, I thought I could slide through them in time.
There's another level of this type, level 20, Behaving, and in that one, the idol's movement is consistent. It just moves in a certain pattern, but in this particular level, it's random. There's a few possible patterns.
Yeah, I was able to jump around that electric fence just by abusing the fact that there was a gap in the scenery. Another thing I want to be careful of, and this will come up a lot in this warp room, is my fruit count. If I hit 100 Wumpa fruit, I will gain an extra life, which will lose some time. The Warp 4 is also a warp room that had an updated route recently, and it made getting fruit in this level less frequent. But there's another level where I will be dangerously close to getting 100 fruit. So, but thankfully it's not too slow to death abuse in these levels. So I was digging it. The next level is probably if it's not the single most terrifying level in the run, it's up there. This is Ruination. It has a lot of really treacherous jumps, and I have to do all of it with 0 lives. And I also have to leave the level with 2 masks. So basically, a lot can go wrong in this level. I'll do it I suppose, fast way first if I feel comfortable. If it goes south and I game over, I'll probably just play it safe at the second pass. But this is one of the levels as to why I set my estimate to be so high, is that a lot can go wrong here. So we death abuse down to 0 here.
Yet another one of those spots where you just don't get any respawn animation at all.
Yeah. And then it is a really cool level when it goes well, but it's very easy for it to go wrong, just because of how much you have to do. So there will be some really scary jumps coming up, and I hope they line up well.
Yeah, the convenient thing about this, since you're death abusing at that checkpoint, so in the Crash games, whenever you die, the cycles reset. And so those moving platforms that Rico just jumped across are pretty much going to be in roughly the same position every single time you get to them in this, because you've always died and reset the cycles, so at least there's that, making it a little less bad than it could be.
Yeah, that death abuse is actually used outside of Go, but that's the only place where you do it like 5 times. Mm-hmm. So that was Ruination. Thankfully that went really well. The next level is Hanging Out. This is the only level where we're going to go invincible, ideally. Invincibility in Crash 2 is actually very slow. It makes neutral slide spin pretty useless. But there will be a section pretty early into this level where it will actually be useful to go invincible. And I'm going to play this really safe as well, because it does lose a fair bit of time to not get the invincibility here. Alright, that's the scariest part, is getting through those 2 barrels and then not getting hit by any of these spike enemies.
Yeah, so hangrails appear in level 10 back in Warp 2, but we didn't really see them because we death abused before that.
Well before them.
So yeah, here's the first time you're seeing it. Hangrails are very slow, and this is what we want the invincibility for, to use it to skip some hangrails.
Yeah.
Because this is horrendously slow movement compared to normal.
Here you drop down to normal movement because the slide spin will be very slow. So you can actually go really fast on the hangrails, or you can just do this. See if I can skip this life crate. I almost got it. That one's a little odd to skip, but thankfully the next level, death abusing, is really easy. I just slide spin there out of habit. But yeah, that entire section's really slow if you don't have invincibility. Just finish out the rest of this level. And some damage abuses here are fine, just because there's a lot of masks going into the next level, and like I said, you don't really want to have invincibility, so giving up some in this level is fine.
Yeah, like you'd actually have to go a little bit slow to purposely avoid a mask in the next level if you have 2 masks already.
Yeah. So this is Cold Hard Crash. Casually and 100% playthroughs, this is a notoriously very difficult level. It's a lot simpler in any percent passes. Yeah, that was the mask that I would have had to slow down to skip if I had entered this level too. It's also very important that I don't die before a certain point in the level, even though I do have an extra life. This level has what is called a death route. It is a secret path that you can unlock if you reach it without dying. Oh, this could be bad. Alright, that's fine. Oh, that's fine also. Actually just learned how to do that stairway skip recently.
That platform right there with the skull and crossbones on it, that platform disappears if you die before you reach it.
Yeah,
so.
And Cold Hard is unique in that the death route is faster than the main level itself. I did actually practice the main level on the off chance I did die before reaching it, because I feel like that would be faster than resetting the entire level. I also have experience with the death route because of Insane Trilogy. And jump over that gem again for the same reason if you don't want to grab it and throw it in the warp room. Funnily enough, the game over abuse does also work with gems. Yeah, this was the level where like grabbing fruit is dangerous. There I hit 100, but thankfully death abusing at the end of Cold Hard Crash is very quick, so it didn't lose me too much time to do that. And we'll be finishing out this warp room with Behaving. This is the second of the levels that we said was similar to Digging It. There are some key distinctions. For one, there are bees in Digging It that we didn't really see too much of because when they first started appearing, I game over abused shortly after. They chase you in droves of 1 in Digging It, and Behaving they chase you in droves of 5, and it's terrifying. Side note, that doesn't have any bearing on the run itself. I am terrified of bees, so this level always gives me the creeps. Yeah. But thankfully, because of neutral slide spin, you never really see them. Another thing of note with these levels is the diggable dirt. This red dirt, if you do a standing spin on it, you'll actually dive into it, and the intended mechanic is that you use this to dodge the bees because you're not supposed to be able to outrun them. We are speedrunners, and we don't like doing that because it's slow. I'm going to grab this checkpoint for safety. I don't usually like going out of my way for it, but I have died in this level accidentally and lost a bit of time just going back a bit farther than I wanted to. Thankfully this level is pretty straightforward though. We should be able to skip some bee stuff at the end of this. Even if it goes wrong, I do have this mask that I won't be able to take into the next boss fight, so it all worked out. The bees were chasing me that entire time, which you might have been able to hear, but... Alright, so that's Warp 4, and that's where a lot of the hard stuff has gotten out of the way. And this next boss fight is Engine. This is the, probably the most skill-intensive fight in the game. Crash 2 is not really big on boss fights. But this one has a lot to it. He has 5 hit points, and you have to destroy his mech. I also need to death abuse before this.
Yeah, there's like a very mini invisible wall-ish thing in front there that you have to jump over. It's kind of funny.
I'm actually going to keep 1 life for safety, because I'm going to do some stuff differently in Warp 5. So every arm has 10 hit points, and if you time it properly, you can break both at the same time. I mistimed my mashing just a little bit, so... And if you don't break them both at the same time, they regain hit points, which is really stupid. And then these shoulders have 5 hit points each. It's the same idea. Oh, well, this could be bad. Okay, there we go.
Yeah,
so this last phase you can actually do very quickly. It's very, very risky, and I'm not going to do it. I'm more consistent at it now than I used to be. Not enough for me to feel comfortable doing it in a marathon. Yeah, that also takes 5 hits, and if you're quick enough, you can do it in all 5. Also, shoutouts to German Engine. Sounds so angry. I love it. Alright, so I'm actually going to do Warp 5 differently than I would normally do in a Go Abuse run, and that's just because of a trick I'm going to be doing at the very end. There's a number of factors in it that I've realized in practice could go wrong and lose a lot of time. So there's going to be 1 level in this category, in this warp room, that I would normally game over abuse in, but I won't, and it'll lose a little bit of time, but it'll be a lot safer. So this is Piston It Away. This is another notoriously difficult level, which is why I kept 1 life in it, because I normally don't do this level with 0 lives because the route is different and I would have 4 entering it. But because of the way I'm rerouting, it's still much faster to death abuse an engine. So I just decided to leave myself a life for safety. You can do some really cool 3D jumps in this level. Grab a crystal and then just death abuse here, and then just death abuse for the game over. So the next level is Spaced Out. This is, in my opinion, the hardest level overall in Crash 2. I don't know if it's the hardest level in this category, but across every category, this is the one that I feel gives a lot of people the most trouble. I'm going to Death Abuse at the very beginning. I think that's technically slower, but it lines up cycles in a way that I am completely comfortable with where they are. And I have to Death Abuse down to 0 on this level anyway, so it just makes sense to me to do them. But it lines up all these cycles to be about the way I wanted them to be. Alright, I was a little sloppy on the movement there, so I'm going to slow down here. That was a little gross. Oh, okay. I thought I saw him put the arms down, so that's fine.
There's one of our death abuses that we needed anyway.
Yeah, that's one nice thing about game over abuse is that in situations where you wouldn't game over, if you have an accidental death, it doesn't lose as much time as it could, just because it's one less death abuse you need to do. So I'm going to death abuse down to 0. I'll do 1 again, just for safety's sake. Just because I don't really want to game over at any point in this warp room.
Yeah, we're doing good so far. No unintentional game overs anywhere, so
Yeah.
it'd be nice to keep up that trend.
Yeah, the next level is the last level where an unintentional game over could happen, so I'd like to avoid it. Yeah, this is going really well. Right, so next level will be Night Fight. This is the only dark level we see in this category. There's a firefly that helps light your way, and the crystal's about midway through the level, so this is another place to game over abuse. Game overing or death abusing is somewhat slow in this level just because of where hole placement, which is why it's still better to just death abuse in, spaced out or engine. The normal route I would have done this level first. This level's a little tricky just because if you get a wrong way slide at the wrong time, you can just veer into a hole, which is why I kept 1 life. That crate actually had a life that I spinning away, but I missed it. Something we didn't really mention, these enemies can only be slid under, so timing your slide spins is important there. You can use the invincibility frames on spins to dodge all those spike bots. And then you just grab this checkpoint to make the death abuse a little faster. And there. So the last 2 levels are jetpack levels. There's a trick you can do in both of these. Again, for safety, I'm only going to do it in the last one, or at least attempt it in the last one. This runs on a good enough pace that if I miss it in both, I might just keep going. I guess we'll see what the timer's at when I reach there. This is also, the timer's 5 seconds slower than the timing method that Crash 2 uses, because Crash 2's timing starts on movement, and we started on load game, so that was about a 5-second difference. Yeah, so this is Rocket. Jetpack is pretty straightforward. You just hold X and move forward. These electric guys on the PAL version, you can actually fly through. Did we mention why we run on the PAL version? I know we mentioned that we were using it.
We did not actually talk about that at all.
That's a good time to talk about it.
There's a lot of things that go into that, but the very basic answer is Crash physically moves faster. That's the most important part.
Yeah,
his jumps are also higher, and then there's also other random stuff, only relevant to 100%, but his body slam range is better in this. There's that thing that we just saw in the jetpack levels where you can fly straight through the scientists.
I don't think this has a shot of PBing even if I get the next trick, so if I mess it up, I'll just go for it again.
Yeah, let's give Packless a bit of a showing here.
Yeah, this is a really cool trick that I actually learned recently thanks to Wingo, one of the organizers and current 2nd place in Crash to 100%. Yes, first try. Alright, do you want to explain this while I go through it?
Yeah, so I don't really know why it works the way it does, but for whatever reason, when you are trying to slide past the trigger to get the jetpack attached to you, for whatever reason, if you pause like that, when you unpause, it gives you a frame of control. And if you use that to time an NSS, time the spin of an NSS, you can get past the trigger and make it so it never actually gives you the jetpack. The thing about these levels is that they're designed around using the jetpack. Okay, hold on, this is weird.
Yes.
I have no idea how to explain that, frankly.
I
so-
think Sword of Seals explained it once that the level loads in chunks. So when you reach the last chunk, the level realizes you're on foot, so it throws you out to the end of the level because it thinks you should be there. But yeah, that skip at the end is the biggest reason that saves so much time in Pack Attack. It does save a little bit of time in Rocket, but you can't actually finish the level on foot. So you have to Death Abuse, and it's still only like 5 seconds or so. So this is
Yeah.
the most pathetic final boss in the history of video games.
You just chase him, you hold X, and you hit him 3 times,
Yeah.
and it's done.
Yeah,
And you-
time is coming on the last hit of this, which will be in a matter of seconds. All right, last hit will be time. And time. That was a sub 40
Nice. Yeah, that was a good one.
with SDA timing. That's 39:52. So yeah, that was way better than I could have ever wanted it to be. Yeah, that was Crash 2 Game Over Reviews. Hope I had a really good showing of it. I think this is a really cool category that gets underrated quite a lot. So I'm glad I was able to show it off in a marathon setting, and hopefully that'll bring a lot of interest to it. But yeah.
That's hoping for a bit much, but you know.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Rico. This is Burgerlands, and that was Crash 2.
Good run.
Yep.